Prayer is often discussed either as a religious duty or as a philosophical controversy. William James approaches it differently. In the Varieties of Religious Experience, he treats prayer as a psychological phenomenon, something that can be described from the inside as experienced and studied from the outside in terms of its patterns and consequences. His goal is not to prove a doctrine and not to dismiss prayer as mere superstition. His goal is to understand what prayer is as an act of consciousness, what it does to attention, emotion, meaning, and the organization of the self. James begins with a methodological choice that matters throughout Varieties. He distinguishes individual experience from institutional religion. Prayer, in his approach, is not primarily an official ritual performed correctly according to a rulebook. It is the lived act of addressing what the person takes to be a higher presence, a deeper order, or a more beyond the ordinary self. The object of prayer may be named differently across traditions, but James is interested in the psychological structure, a directed stance of the mind and heart, a form of attention that recenters the self around what feels ultimate. One way to see James's approach is to treat prayer as a technology of attention. In his psychology, attention is selection. What you attend to becomes your experience. Prayer is an organized selection, a sustained focusing of the stream of consciousness toward a certain kind of meaning. It gathers scattered thoughts into a single orientation. It can quiet certain impulses and amplify others. It can stabilize a person's inner life by giving the mind a fixed point to return to, even if one remains agnostic about metaphysics. This attentional structure is psychologically real. Prayer changes what becomes salient, what becomes emotionally charged, and what becomes interpreted as significant. James also emphasizes the emotional dimension. Prayer is rarely a neutral mental exercise. It is typically linked to need, guilt, fear, gratitude, longing, relief, or moral aspiration. In James's language, it often appears most clearly when the self is under strain, when a person feels divided, exhausted, or overwhelmed by the limits of self-control. Here, prayer functions as an attempt to recruit a larger source of support, whether interpreted as divine or as a deeper layer of life. Psychologically, this can shift the emotional economy of a person. It can reframe suffering, reorganize hope, and convert anxiety into a more structured form of expectation. This is why James connects prayer to his idea of the divided self. Many of the most intense forms of prayer appear when a person experiences inner conflict between impulse and ideal, between despair and responsibility, between perceived failure and the desire for renewal. Prayer can function as a response to this division by creating a new center of gravity in orientation that feels stronger than the unstable self. In some cases, prayer accompanies conversion, the reorganization of the self into a more unified form. James is not claiming that prayer always produces conversion. He is claiming that prayer often participates in the psychological process by which the self is recentered. James also considers the fruits of prayer, consequences in lived life. This is where his pragmatism quietly informs his psychology of religion. James suggests that prayer can be evaluated, in part, by what it produces. Does it strengthen moral energy? Does it reduce destructive inner conflict? Does it help a person sustain commitments, resist harmful impulses, or endure suffering with greater coherence? These are psychological outcomes. They do not automatically validate a metaphysical interpretation, but they do make the phenomenon scientifically and philosophically serious. If prayer consistently produces certain kinds of reorganization in people's lives, then it is not an empty gesture. It is a functional act within the economy of mind. At the same time, James refuses to romanticize prayer. Not all prayer is healthy. Some forms can deepen guilt, intensify fear, or foster passivity in ways that reduce agency. Some prayer can become compulsive or rigid. James's framework allows that possibility because he is not trying to build a devotional manual. He is studying varieties. Prayer can be stabilizing or destabilizing depending on temperament, context, and the content of the person's belief world. That is why James is careful to focus on outcomes and patterns rather than assuming a single moral verdict. An important subtlety in James is that prayer is not only asking for external events. Prayer is about inner transformation. People pray for courage, patience, forgiveness, clarity, or strength. Psychologically, this is not identical to wishful thinking. It is a form of self-orientation. The person is trying to align attention and emotion with a desired moral direction. In James's terms, this can recruit will and habit indirectly. A person who prays repeatedly for steadiness may be building a stable, attentional routine that makes steadiness more achievable. The mechanism is not magic. It is recentering and repetition within the stream of consciousness. Prayer is also linked, in Varieties, to James's discussion of mysticism. Mystical experiences are often described as passive and noetic, as if something is given. Prayer can function as a practice that prepares the mind for such experiences by quieting ordinary distractions and focusing the self on what it takes to be ultimate. But James does not equate prayer with mysticism. Prayer is often deliberate and repeated. Mysticism is often transient and passive. The psychological relationship is that both reorganize meaning and attention, but they do so in different ways. A predictable objection is that prayer can be explained away as self-suggestion or emotional coping. James's response is methodological. Even if suggestion and coping play a role, the phenomenon remains psychologically real. Suggestion is itself a psychological mechanism worth studying. Coping is itself a psychological function with consequences. James's project is to describe what prayer does within experience. If prayer reorganizes attention, reduces division, and increases moral energy, then psychology has something to explain, regardless of one's metaphysical conclusions. The most Jamesian conclusion is that prayer is best understood as an act that can restructure experience. It is a directed form of consciousness that selects meanings, stabilizes attention, and often changes the emotional tone of life. It can be part of a larger process of self-reorganization, especially in moments of crisis or division. And because James treats religion primarily as lived experience rather than as institution, prayer becomes a central case. It shows how belief and attention can interact to produce real changes in how the world is felt and navigated. If we keep the frame disciplined, the psychological study of prayer does not require preaching and does not require cynicism.